Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
How you doing? And welcome to the program. It's the 4th of the 4th month, the 24th year of the... Oh, shut up. Nice to see you. I mean, that's a figure of speech. Glad that you're there. And it could snow at the Pirates opener tomorrow. Oh, man, sellout crowd. We'll see how tough they are. I would hope they'll just dress accordingly. Snow would be better than rain. I don't know why I feel like if it's snowing, I don't get as wet, but whatever. So that'll be interesting. And if the rivers would cooperate and start receding a bit, God almighty. You know, it's odd that part of a major highway in Pittsburgh, right smack dab in the middle of it, is called the Bathtub, and somehow, I guess there's no way to fix it. It's odd that you got this major roadway that, if the river gets a bit high, goes underwater, and you just close the road. The Bathtub. I remember the first time I heard it when I was here, I thought, you're kidding me. You mean, why don't they fix it? I remember thinking, well, wait, why wouldn't you fix that? I have no idea. Hey, good news. I got some good news today. Let's start with some good news. One from my hometown of Green Bay, Wisconsin, where the horror Donald Trump was the other day, talking about bloodbaths and his usual. And Green Bay, I'm sad to say, has always been a really conservative area. That whole eastern coast of Wisconsin that borders Lake Michigan is pretty reliably conservative Republican. I mean, that's where Senator Joe McCarthy came from, 30 miles south of Green Bay, Appleton, Wisconsin. So I grew up there. Well, I've often told the story of being, would it have been, I was in kindergarten or in first grade, very young. We could figure it out, but it was a presidential election, and it was Dwight David Eisenhower running against Adlai Stevenson. And, like they do, the teacher had us vote. And then she tallied the votes. It was a private vote. Nobody knew who you were voting for. But then she starts tallying it on the blackboard. And I watched with horror. I mean, and as only a child could, when a child learns that she is way out of step with everybody else, because it was Eisenhower, slash Eisenhower, and on it went. And then all of a sudden, Stevenson, there was a mark under Stevenson. I thought, oh, thank God. Eisenhower, and that Stevenson stayed the only one. One. And so it was a rout in Miss Sabo's room. Um, and I sat there trying so hard not to look like I was the one because there was no way of knowing. Supposedly, there was no way of knowing. I sat there like everybody else, thinking, please, please don't look like it was you. I don't know what that would look like, but don't look like it was you. And of course, kids vote the way their parents vote. So, everybody heard about Dwight Eisenhower, and I got nothing against him. He was a good man. But I came from a family of liberal Democrats, and they were unbelievably rare. Now, the only other thing I could figure was, well, I went home for lunch. We walked back and forth. We walked to school, and then we walked back for lunch, and then we walked back to school. This being Norman Rockwellville. And I remember, or maybe it's my mother who had the memory who reminded me, I don't know, but she said that I came home looking extremely puzzled and disconsolate. And the question I asked her, so here in my 6 or 7-year-old head, is how that unbelievable route on the blackboard in which I was the sole loser, how that made sense in my head. And I said to her, Mom, is Adlai Stevenson Jewish? It was the only thing I could think of, because that was the other way that I was so totally on the periphery, and everybody else was over there and I was over here. And is Adlai Stevenson Jewish? But anyway, that's a digression. I wanted to tell you how Green Bay has been reliably uh, red territory, even when Wisconsin was mostly sort of a pretty damn progressive state. Green Bay, not so much a progressive city. Although for one little teeny weeny shining moment, I think in the 60s, maybe into the 70s, we were represented in the Congress by a Catholic priest who was liberal, a Norbertine father. I suspect that the reason this liberal priest was elected was just because he was a priest, and the district is overwhelmingly Catholic. So I have no idea. But for a while he was there until the Pope said, you can't. You cannot serve in a political capacity like that. And he was out. But something amazing happened in Green Bay Tuesday, and I didn't learn of it till yesterday afternoon. Green Bay has been reliably governed by Republicans. And in the Wisconsin primary on Tuesday, unbelievably, the Green Bay City Council flipped. It now is majority Democrat. That is mind-blowing. And again, these little races that you don't necessarily pay any attention to all, well, suggest that things bode well for Democrats. Green Bay's council. Now, it's a tight little, it's tight, but they've got the majority now. Unbelievable. Just saying. So that was the good news out of Green Bay. The bad news out of Green Bay is my mother and my sister, Susan, are still in the house without any electricity. And that's going on now, what? Going on into its second day. And Susan reports that the thermostat is now showing that it's 55 in the house. But that's pretty, and she's impressed. That's pretty good. That means there must be some pretty good insulation in that old homestead. But I can't imagine my poor mom. She must be huddled under blankets. So there's that. And also the weather here, my God, the deluge. I did after the show go and look, and yes, I had flooding in I mean, nothing major, but I definitely had flooding in my a little in my basement and some in my garage. They just can't. The ground can't hold it. He's too wet, and I got made off a lot easier than most people or a lot of people. And I told you about that the picture I had seen of like a television floating down a main street in McKeesport in this what looked like a raging river. And that's been one-upped by a picture of a porta potty. Much better. A porta potty. And I'm not sure where exactly it was, but somewhere around here, a porta potty went, floating by. Which of course reminds us of the dumpster, I think, a few years ago. Good God. Okay, so enough weather related stuff and wet stuff and all of that. I don't know if I want to. Do I want to go heavy right away? I don't. The sun's coming out where I'm sitting, and it suggests that I need to stay in a happier mode. So let's do that. The neatest story I saw today, and lest you didn't, I want to share it with you. A story of survival, a story of what would appear to have been a cataclysmic wipeout of unbelievable numbers of life. Um, Turns out to have a mostly happy ending. This has to do with salmon, the fish. Turns out because of dams, those damn dams and other stuff, salmon can't get to where they need to get to spawn, to do their life cycle. And so in, I guess it's Oregon? The Department of Fish and Wildlife regularly loads about year and a half old salmon. At 18 months old, they're called, I learned a new word. What are they called? Stolts or something? 1.5 year smolts. Smolts. And they load these smolts that are, that are essentially being raised. They load them into huge trucks, obviously, then filled with water and fish. And one of these smolt carrying fish trucks had a little accident. It was carrying over 100,000 salmon live. They're swimming around in there in the truck. 102,000. And it was a little wet out. You know how it's been, even there. His truck skidded. went down an embankment, flipped onto its roof, and in fact, the driver was injured, not grievously, but injured. And tens of thousands of fish were thrown out of the overturned truck. But remember, I said it had skidded down an embankment. And at the end of that embankment was a little creek. And that creek flows into a river. And the river flows into an ocean. And damned if most of those fish actually flipped and flapped their way down the embankment into the creek and started swimming for, well, as one guy who was first on the scene said, man, they hit the water running. Can you imagine all of these, fish? And they're on land, not good. They've just been in an accident, not good. But they smell a creek right near them. It's a little mushy where they are, and they start, how they flip and flop around. They flipped and flopped and made their way. Now, all of them did not, but they figure as many as 80,000 fish did. Um, and I love it. And they're so what they're going to do. It's odd. Salmon are amazing, and salmon in a good year, without these humans taxiing them, they got a hell of a life cycle. If you're a smolt, a young salmon, you're swimming and you got to worry about predators. You got to worry about, humans and other predators. You got to worry about dams. And the idea had been to take these smolts 3 hours up to a pool where they were to stay and get acclimated to the water before they were then released to make their 650-mile journey from the Snake River, the Columbia River, into the Pacific Ocean. Here's a guy explaining what they do. And by the way, after they spawn, they die. Who are we to complain? Here's this guy explaining. They hitch a ride on the spring runoff, tail first. In other words, they're what? How do you swim tail first? So they're just hitching a ride. They're not swimming. They hitch a ride on the spring runoff, tail first, so there's less resistance. That way, they conserve energy for when they get to the ocean. And then these young salmon stay in the ocean for 3 years, getting big and fat, foraging. And then they reverse and go back. They think they use scent memory. They smell their way back to the river from whence they came. It's a pretty incredible, nature is just mind-blowingly fascinating. Mind-blowingly fascinating. I'm being told, yes, guys, you gotta subscribe. Bree's really counting. What? Bree, 7 people were roused, so we're 93 to go. This could be torturous. I don't, you know what? I almost don't want to know if I can't get 93 people to subscribe to this YouTube thing. I'm gonna be very unhappy. And Robert wants me to mention the passing of local comedy legend Joe Flaherty. And you know what? That's all I can do. The problem for me is not getting, I don't subscribe to the PG because it's a scab paper. And I'm really out of it when it comes to local obits and keeping up to date on that. I noted his passing. I have to admit, I don't know a lot about him. The Pittsburgh native who got the most ink for dying yesterday was Lucchino, who the obit said was survived only by his brother, who we know and I know he was a good man. And I'm forgetting what political position he had. So 2 Pittsburgh brothers that both had incredibly successful careers. Lucchino and the one in baseball. I'm blanking on names, so you'll have to forgive me. And I don't have that stuff in front of me. And then I also, Sally Wiggin called me this morning to tell me, and I can't even remember which one. This is how out of it I am. The morning show team, O'Brien and Gary, that I think it's O'Brien died. It might have been Gary, or for that matter. I think they're both gone now. 2 nice guys. I got my start in that same studio, WTAE, and obviously knew them, but that was so long ago. I can't even remember what happened 5 minutes ago. How am I supposed to remember that? And I'm sorry again, I can't tell you anything more. If any of you've got stuff you can send me, go ahead. But not being able to have a daily. I mean, I do look at the Tribune Review, but it doesn't have that much of a Pittsburgh centric. It's still sort of I don't know. I feel starved uh, when it comes to local news. I do. What else? Oh, here's another piece of good news. The guy with the pig kidney. You read about that, right? I mean, whoa. The guy with the pig kidney. There's a shortage. A lot of people have kidney disease. They're on dialysis. It kills them. And man, some guy was agreed because he wasn't going to get a human one. He was going to either be dead or he's going to agree to do this experiment and have a pig kidney stuck into his body. And he's 62 years old. And the surgery was 2 weeks ago. And he went home. He's feeling great. He's feeling better. Now, all of this is early because rejection, especially, you get an organ from another species, your body is inclined to see that as a threat. But he's doing gangbusters, and that's good. And what they've done, which is so fascinating, is it ain't just any pig. It's like, it ain't a pig in a poke. These are pigs that are genetically modified so that there is less of a chance that their kidney will be rejected by the human body. But they like screw around with the DNA of it. It's fascinating. Now, whether or not this is something that a lot of people can make use of is unknown because, when you're fiddling around with the genes of pig donors, that's labor intensive, it's expensive, I'm sure, whatever. And so, of course, all of these medical miracles come with high price tags, and including also the general reluctance of insurance companies to do anything to help us. So what they do is they actually, with the pigs that they're using, they remove 3 of the genes that the pigs have that they think are most likely to trigger organ rejection. And then they put into these little piglets 7 human genes, so that when that kidney goes into a recipient, the human body is a little confused, saying, well, this looks like it's got a lot of pig stuff in it, but whoa, here's some human. And they're hoping that may, in fact, prevent rejection. But to be clear, people who get organ transplants, and perhaps some of you have, it's, while life-saving, it does put you at constant risk of rejection. And you end up having to take lots of meds that are not necessarily the kind of things you want to be taking. I think it also makes you very susceptible to other diseases. Oh, and speaking about other diseases, I saw, somebody help me here. If you were to be, let's say, dropped, time traveled into the 1600s in London, okay? You think you'd be able to, get around? You think you'd be able to, walk into a place and get yourself a room and or talk to people? Or what? What do you think it would be like? They're speaking English. It's 1630, let's say. And I know my brother always used to like to imagine this kind of thing. And he said, I'll tell you, one of the first things that would happen to you is you pass out from the sheer stench. And I don't know if he's right about that, but I suspect he is. I'm sure he is. Because they didn't have modern sewer systems and people didn't have full body deodorant, God knows. And so the smell alone would be off putting, but also the English that's being spoken then does not sound exactly like, all you have to do is listen to a Shakespeare play to know, huh? It's definitely the same language, but clearly an earlier form. So I came upon something from, I don't know is who, somebody in an official capacity was the job was to determine what killed Londoners. And the year was 1632. And the headline of this is "The Diseases and Casualties This Year Being 1632." Well, first of all, let me tell you, the diseases and casualties. Oy, yay, 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 yay. Whoa. I suppose still there's many ways you can go, but the thing about this is I don't even know what half these things are, including the most deadly of all, which is responsible for over 2,000 deaths. I don't know what the word is. It says chrysomes and infants. Well, I'm just going to assume that that's, a baby gets born and doesn't make it, you know, much longer than a week or two. The mortality rate for infants was huge. But I don't know what chrysomes are. What does that mean? Chrysomes. Okay, so that's the biggest killer. The next is consumption, which is TB, right? And that's almost at 2,000. And then you get fever taken out over 1,000. But it's some of these others are okay. The first one, it's in alphabetical order. So the last one is worms. 27 Londoners in 1632 died of worms. But the first is abortive and stillborn. So that's huge. Now, what does that mean? Abortive, pregnancies terminated and stillborn babies are lumped together. So abortion and stillborn. And that's a big one. That's 445. But geez, there are things here that here's another one. Dead in the street. Dead in the street was the fate of 5. Well, it adds and starved. Dead in the street and starved. Okay, so people just dying of starvation in the street. 38 people died of something called King's Evil. And this is mind blowing to me, only 7 were murdered. Sure isn't the US of A in 2024. Only 7 were murdered. 15 suicided. 8 died of the plague. I don't know. Bloody flux. How would you like that? Oh, one was bit by a mad dog, and there you have it. And one died of piles. How do you die of piles? Isn't that hemorrhoids? I'm not sure. And there's also something called rising of the lights. That's the cause of death. Rising of the lights. And man, rising of the lights took out 98 people that year. All right, so that's it. I was just I was fascinated by this. 18 were executed, so that the state murdered more people than people murdered people. So there you have it. And cancer. Now who knows if cancer, which is our big killer, 10 people, and they have nothing which translates to heart disease. It doesn't exist here, so we don't know how that would be perceived, but whatever. I find all of that wondrously fascinating. So that women's basketball game that I was raving about, Iowa LSU, you saw that that was the highest watched, had the biggest numbers of, I mean, by far, just broke every record for people watching. I mean, like tripled the old record. I don't know, just amazing. And a lot of those viewers will be back because the women put on a hell of a game. And part of it, I think, might be that the men's game is becoming more and more just so big guy, giant physical thing, that the women's game just sort of seems to have more finesse. More, it looks more like the men's game might have looked some time ago. And I just, yeah, I don't know. So I don't think that'll be stopping anytime soon. And Angel Reese, who doesn't get quite as much attention as Caitlin Clark, and a lot of people see racism in that. But I don't know. The fact is, Caitlin Clark has just demolished all these records, and nobody is saying Angel Reese ain't a remarkable talent. They will both go, who knows, 1 and 2 or right in the draft. And Reese announced that she was foregoing. She could play for another year in college, but she's saying to hell with that and going into the pros. And she announced it in an unusual way, but not for the way our economy and celebrity culture works. She announced it in Vogue magazine because she's beautiful. She's beautiful, and man, there's a spread, and she's just an incredibly good looking and extraordinarily talented, athletically human being. So what's fascinating to me is that I bet both these young women, college age, um, probably have are they must have $1 million already. They are going to be multi-millionaires. They are going to make money hand over fist. Angel Reese has another road to take besides the sports angle because of her physical beauty as well. It's going to make her more of a target for all the crap that comes at successful women, and even crap comes at unsuccessful women too. But um, it's something she knows that she can monetize. So there's that. But that brings me to this thing that I've mentioned before, and I can't believe it was allowed to happen, and I can't believe it will end well. And I just want to say that again, this effing Supreme Court, which in a decision 4 or 5 years ago paved the way for what we are seeing now, this just boom, all 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 the kinds of safeguards that had been put up to keep sports away from gambling, to have a absolute red line there, have now been erased because of the Supreme Court. And so what we have now, we went from, that being absolutely something that, would get you. I mean, look what happened to Pete Rose, for God's sakes. Wouldn't happen today. Oh, maybe it would. I don't know. The fact is this is now sort of like the wild, wild west. And the leagues and teams have signed these huge, lucrative marketing deals with like FanDuel and DraftKings and all these other things that assault us with their advertising when you're watching TV. And to think that this is not going to corrupt the sport or make people, as with almost everything else now, doubt the reality of the outcome. The fact that people will think things are fixed or somebody got gotten to. Of course, that's going to happen. But the thing is, it's happening to individual players who are being targeted now by fans who bet on them. You know, you can not just bet on you bet on, how many times will this guy, have a 3-point or dunk or fall to the ground. You can bet on anything. And so the people in the stands and the people watching at home, they got money riding on this. And the verbal abuse directed at mostly basketball players right now. And why would that be? Because basketball players are playing just a few feet away from the fans, right? And they don't have helmets or pads on. They're right there indoors, and the fans can scream at them and they can be heard. They can even get at them if they want to. And so they're already seeing this frightening uptick in verbal abuse directed at specific players and at coaches, based solely on how the abuser, the fan who's abusing them, has bet. Somebody does something and they just cost the guy millions of dollars or something. So fans can place bets in real time, right? You see that on the ads. In real time on their smartphones, on anything, as I said. How many rebounds in the first half? How many points? How many blah, 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 blah. And if those bets don't pay off for them, a lot of them, and we're living in a time in which people seem to have totally lost any sense of, decorum and civil conduct. Anyway, one of the Los Angeles Clippers said, it's just getting outrageous. It's getting crazy. I mean, even in the arenas, hearing fans yelling at us, it's unreal. It's a problem. I think it's got to be addressed. And I think that's true. And Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark and these other young women, they are getting this kind of. Caitlin Clark was the focus of the second most bets of any player, man or woman, in the NCAA tournament this year so far. I don't know who the first place, the most bets of any player. And Americans will bet legally now $3 billion on just these college games, the NCAA tournament. $3 billion. You bet people are going to get nuts and people are going to scream. One of the NBA teams has added extra security to its bench this season. You're sitting right there. The fans are right behind you. And it's all different now because even if you watch the guys who are calling the games, they're talking about the betting as it goes on. When just, 5 years ago, something like that would cost them their jobs. Some states are now, trying to mitigate some of this by, criminalizing betting, what are called prop bets. I guess those are those little sort of uh, to where you're betting on something other than the outcome of the game. You're betting on how many times will Caitlin Clark sneeze. I mean, you can bet on anything. Um, So I know Iowa has already banned prop bets on in-state teams. I thought I saw somewhere today that Louisiana was considering also banning these prop bets. Are the ones that they think are the most dangerous. Oh, Kurt, thanks. He's responding to it. Dying of rising of the lights, which took a lot of folks. I thought, was it an eclipse of some sort, a meteor? No, rising of the lights was an illness or obstructive condition of the larynx, the trachea or lungs, maybe what we would call croup. It was a common entry on bills of mortality in the 17th century. Lights in this case refer to the lungs. Oh, rising of the lights. And Kurt goes on to say, I have an old family postcard referring to someone having dropsy. Yeah, I've heard of dropsy. And that's edema, they think. Maybe someone like gout. I don't know if in this one dropsy's there. I saw gout as one of the, let me see if anybody had dropsy back there. And yeah, dropsies and swelling. 267 people died in London in 1632 of dropsy. Dropsy is right under dead in the street. I'm sorry. Why? Some Jesus. Yeah, dropsy. And next one, drowned. 34. Jesus H. But this, the betting. What could go wrong? Yeah, what could go wrong indeed? It's a shame. It really is. All right, there's all that. Now I wanna why I still have time. I've where is it? I am so disorganized. Okay, I got it. This is a little more. Remember, I said I didn't want to get heavy, and I think I've done pretty well, haven't I? Yeah. Um, will someone tell me where this and I can't even do it. So where this snapping fingers, where I'm trying to snap my fingers now, and you can't hear anything because it's not making. I can't. It's not making a sound. So who is the genius? Where did this everybody instead of clapping starts clicking their fingers, which would take me out of the mix. I cannot show appreciation by doing this finger thing, nor do I want to. Where the hell did that come from? The grumpy old lady said. I mean, really? I think I have some vague memory, as many of my memories are, of like at things like poetry slams, which I've never been to, that would be the way of showing appreciation. I mean, and I understand that other one where you just wave your hands. That's for deaf people, right? So they can see they're applauding. Okay, I get that. But What's wrong with clapping, and why should it be replaced by finger snapping when a whole bunch of us can't? It's like whistling. I don't think I can whistle either. See, I can't whistle. I can't snap my friggin' fingers. Every once in a while I do. But boy, today, not at all. And every once in a while I can whistle, but today, not at all. So I'm just saying. All right. I've only got, how much time do I have here? Okay. Um, I have a woman, wonderful woman, who comes and works on my dilapidated body twice a week here in my house. And I tell you, my living room now is uh, a studio, a gymnasium, a living room, and a game room. It is odd, and it doesn't look like a normal kind of a living room. Okay. There is, by the way, a fascinating article which was in the New York Times. It's very long, but it's written by a guy who worked at the National Enquirer um, when they were buying off people like Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, when they were grabbing rights to people's stories and then not even publishing those stories because they would harm Donald Trump. So it's all about how he saw, I mean, in real time, what was going on. It's titled What I Saw Working at the National Enquirer During Donald Trump's Rise. And it is, I mean, this guy, his name is Lachlan Cartwright. He's an Australian. They kept him when he started saying, you're going to do what? That doesn't seem kosher. And he started getting threatened by the Inquirer and others. They were protecting not just Trump, they were protecting Weinstein, remember, the guy who's now doing a lot of time for rape, the producer, um, because anyone who was considered a friend of the publisher, friend of Pecker, an FOP, you didn't touch. And in fact, you put out a lot of money to. So the fact that this trial, the trial involving that, is going to, unless Trump pulls another friggin' rabbit out of his ass. I'm sorry I'm being so crude, but he brings it out in us all. That trial should start in about 10 days, right? The 15th. And read this article beforehand because, man, a lot of these people are going to end up obviously testifying. And this guy writes this in part as a mea culpa, as he should, because he was very much involved in this. And he said that when the indictment for Trump came out on the Stormy Daniels hush money thing that the New York DA brought, Bragg, he said he read it and it was so bizarre to read what he had lived and put down, as he says, it felt so opaque and contentious and complex when I had to navigate my way through this in real time. But there in the indictment, it was outlined in plain and unafraid black and white. But the 13-page statement of facts brought me to tears. And I guess it included stuff he hadn't known of everything that Pecker and the Inquirer were willing to do to keep Trump safe. And in fact, he says the secret deal that was made at Trump Tower, where Pecker told Cohen, who will be testifying against Trump, Pecker told Cohen he would act as the campaign's eyes and ears. So all of this publishing of negative stories about Clinton, I mean, he was party to all of this stuff. And it didn't matter if there was truth in any of them. The Inquirer was full on part of the Trump campaign effort. It's a it's a fascinating piece. I don't know when it will appear in the print, but it's the fact that I saw it's out there now. And the only other thing I want to say, ooh, well, thank you, finger snapping, you guys, thank you. Gigi says, I know that some folks who are avid birders use finger snapping at events rather than clapping in order to preserve their hearing. Ah, come on. So, excuse me, so they can hear those high pitched bird songs. A room full or a concert half full of people clapping measures up to a pretty high decibel level. Jeez. What? People are so strange. So strange. Well, that's fine, but I don't want a finger click, snap. Here's Jonathan's response. It started during the 50s in Greenwich Village, where a generation of American youth dropped out, called themselves beatniks, and gathered in dingy basement apartments to read their own poetry. And then, instead of clapping, which would disturb the residents who lived upstairs, they snapped their fingers. Well, maybe. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I remember my parents took us on a trip to New York City and other places when we were, I must have been about 12. And the biggest event was in the New York trip was Bill and I saw polar bears doing you know what. Yeah, we were beside ourselves. And also that same day, a pigeon pooped on my mom's head. And we all were so convulsed in laughter. And she became so enraged that nobody would help her. I can't quite remember what happened, but I'm not sure she talked to any of us for the rest of the trip. Um, but I do recall, since you said the word, or I said it, but Jonathan, you sent it, the word beatnik. I do remember um, excitedly telling my friends when I got back that we went down to Greenwich Village and we were looking for beatniks, who I guess we thought of as, like very bizarre. In fact, I suspect my poor father never would have realized that in just about 5 or 6 years, his own children would look to him like the beatniks looked, only they'd be calling themselves hippies. And he would be just as appalled and horrified. Well, okay. You know what? I didn't even get to this thing that I'm looking for, and it's okay because time's up. Time's up. I thank you very much for being there. And I'll say once more, if you haven't, can you please? I don't know how you do it. Can't be hard, huh? Could you subscribe, right, to Lynn Cullen Live on YouTube, and could you and say you like it? I think this is. I'm so sick of this everybody's got to be. You want clicks, you want numbers. That's what it's about now. Clicks and numbers, and then you monetize it. And you know what? I'm not playing that game. I'm really not. I don't have to. I'm old, I'm tired, and I don't wanna. If I'd wanted to, I would have started monetizing this nonsense 2 decades ago, right? It's just not the kind of thing I get into. I'm sorry. Okay, that's it. You have a great weekend. God knows what will befall us in the 3.5 days that I will not be speaking to you. But talk at you Monday, the day of the solar, God help us, eclipse.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.